So let's take a look at this breaking news story. It's the New York Times that broke the FIFA story that officials were arrested in Switzerland on corruption charges.
That's right. Let's take a look at that article in the New York Times. It's definitely buzzing this morning. You can see the New York Times is reporting about these unnamed FIFA officials arrested early this morning in a peaceful operation, according to the New York Times, in this high-end hotel in Zurich. Zurich, of course, is where these FIFA officials have gathered for the organization's annual meeting, which is scheduled for this Friday. Swiss authorities have confirmed that 6 people were arrested. The exact names of who was arrested is going to probably come out later today.
We've got rumors already. But
rumors are spinning. If you want to read more about the probe, you can find out all the details in the New York Times, but more details are going to come out later today. But as you can see here, the New York Times is saying that those who have been arrested could face this extradition to the United States. What kind of charges are we talking about? Well, widespread corruption charges over the past 2 decades, according to the New York Times, involving bids for the World Cup, as well as marketing and broadcast deals. And in fact, the New York Times quotes sources very close to the investigation that say that the charges include wire fraud, racketeering, and money laundering. So very serious charges here. And as I said, more details are going to come out.
But FIFA has been suspected of corruption before.
Absolutely. In fact, there's a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal that came out yesterday, actually. So before these allegations.
Interesting timing.
Interesting timing indeed. Now, this article takes a closer look at the inner workings of FIFA. Remember, FIFA is a multi-billion-dollar organization that governs the world's most popular sport, many would say, for years.
Though not necessarily in the United States.
Exactly. Many people, according to the Wall Street Journal, believe that FIFA has been operating with too little oversight and even less transparency. Very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal. I definitely recommend that. Shows how FIFA has evolved since Sepp Blatter became the president of FIFA 17 years ago. Very interesting. They say that he's brought FIFA a lot of cash, but also a lot of controversy, and they detail his presidency. Very interesting article. Now, up until now, it seemed like he was going to be easily reelected for a 5th term on Friday, but that could be in jeopardy given these latest
definitely hanging in the balance there. Let's move on now to China's military strategy. We were talking about this earlier yesterday. Beijing issued a document that is in the spotlight.
That's right. This is a document about military strategy. It's on the front page of China Daily today. You can see here they're talking about active defense policy. So this is a white paper, as it's called, on military strategy. It highlights 4 areas of critical importance. You can read more about it in detail in China Daily today. So these 4 areas of critical importance are the ocean, outer space, nuclear force, and cyberspace. Now, in its editorial, China Daily says that this blueprint is China's latest attempt to improve its military transparency. It's a solemn pledge from China that no matter how strong the country grows, it will oppose hegemony and will never pursue expansion.
Other papers, however, are more skeptical, especially in this shift. They're alarmed by this shift in China's Navy strategy.
That's right. That's one of those 4 critical areas, the naval policy.
The South China Sea.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're talking about. We've been seeing lots of reports in the U.S. media, especially about expansion coming from China. You've perhaps seen these kind of satellite images where you can see China building things. For instance, here, this is in the Washington Post. This is a satellite image from April where you can see them building an air landing strip here.
Even
you can
on
see
islands, building islands.
Building
lighthouses.
Sand castles. That's what the Washington Post calls it. You can see here the Washington Post is very critical of these changes. And
dangerous provocation.
Dangerous provocation demands a response from the United States. And indeed, if we take a look at the editorial in the Wall Street Journal today as well, they agree. They're also alarmed. A rising China is the greatest long-term regional challenge that Western democracies are facing, but it's part of a wider trend, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal says that China, Russia, and Iran are also advancing. Why? Because the U.S. is retreating. The Wall Street Journal is very critical of Obama's foreign policy. You can see it's talking about the rise of the regional hegemons, so this hegemony that's growing around the world because the U.S. is retreating.
Now, let's stay in Asia now, and papers are focusing on Malaysia, where authorities have started exhuming bodies suspected to be migrants buried close to the Thai border.
That's right. It's a tragic story. You can read about it in several papers. This is an article in The Independent here. You can see a photo of authorities finding these bodies here. The Independent reports about nearly 140 grave sites. Now, there were also transit camps, or the remains of transit camps, that were discovered. You can read more about it in the Malaysian press. I pulled out, first of all, the front page of The Star, which is the paper in Malaysia. It talks about how authorities are finding the remains of these transit camps where human trafficking victims were kept. You can see here, The Star talks about how these camps looked a lot like Vietnam War type detention camps. Victims were forced to live in cruel accommodations, confined in cages with barbed wire as traffickers watched over them from guarded towers. So these are reporters from The Star that went to these sites. And in its editorial today, The Star is incredibly outraged by these findings. It says, "We should be horrified and ashamed of this utter disregard for human lives." And in fact, The Star blames the Malaysian government for being really in denial about what's happening in Malaysia on its border with Thailand. And you can see here this message: it's time to stop the heartless predators, which are human traffickers.
Thank you so much, Florence Vilmino, with that international press review.